Thank you, John, and the great panel, everyone. That's the thing that's frustrating is I feel that every time we have people on stage, we just don't want it to end because there's so much more to talk about. I understand the frustration, but that's the purpose of this is to connect you all, and then you can continue that conversation afterwards. John did a beautiful job introducing people, and I just want to remind you that we've been quite short on the introduction because we wanted to leave more time for questions, but all of those people have their bio on the website, and I encourage you to read it because it was actually quite difficult to decide which panel to put those people on. They could have been on 10 different panels because even though I invite them to speak about something specific, many of them could contribute to other panels. So please reach out to them and engage during the lunch and at the end of the day and continue the conversation afterwards. Um, One of the new hot topic is agroforestery. It seems like every day when you're watching the news, the wine news, a new winery is using agroforestry to promote what they're doing in terms of sustainability. So the question is it greenwashing? Is it important? If you look back at history, vines and trees have always grown beside each other together. Actually, there was kind of a symbiosis. Today, if you look at Bolivia, in Bolivia, they still have uh, parcel where the trees are with the vine. Like there's no division. Why did we stop and go to monoculture? It was because it was easier. We wanted to mechanize the vineyard. We wanted to have um, more production, more yield, and it was a lot more easy. But we all know that monoculture brings its load of problems. So we're going back in a way where we want to reintroduce biodiversity. And we've also learned that if you have trees and hedgerow, well, it helps you with the shade, it helps you with the water. It's also important for carbon sequestration. So there's so many benefits to have trees and diversity, yet it's complicated, right? Because if you do the wrong thing, you can lose crop. I've talked to some producers who have tried it without being informed, and it was a disaster. They lost all the newly planted vines because they were not aware of all the things around it. So you need to know what you're doing. And I think we're going to have a great conversation because with me, I have Noelia Orts from Emiliana. And Noelia is from Spain, and she studied in Spain viticulture and enology, um, and then eventually landed in Chile and fell in love and studied in Chile. And she's been working at Emiliana since 2011. You all know how Emiliana has been involved with sustainability for a very long time. And I think what's going to be interesting to talk with Noelia is it's not like they're trying to introduce trees, it's there all around, right? So we'll talk about what does it mean for her, what she's been experiencing, having those trees around in comparison also to neighbors who might not be as fortunate, and the benefit that she's experiencing in the context of climate change. And then I have Pierre Philippe from Vignerons de Buzet that I had the pleasure to visit in France. I went to visit after reading about it, and after writing about him in my book, and I went afterwards because Pierre Philippe has been at the at Vignerons de Buzet since 2005, which is a co-op, and he's been a driving force in moving the co-op towards sustainability. And I highly admire everything that they've done because as a co-op, if you do that, it has such a big impact in your area. So it's extremely important. We're going to talk about agroforestry, which looking more at how to introduce it. So, Noelia has the beautiful forest around her, but Pierre Philippe has been wanting to have the scientific background. What do you have to look at when you introduce the trees? However, I invite you during the break to talk to him about the water treatment that they have. It's amazing. So that's something for another topic, the next conference. So ask him about that because it's also very interesting. And He likes to pretend he doesn't speak well English, but he understands. But Pierre Philippe wanted to make sure he had the very specific terms because it's quite technical. So when we get to Pierre Philippe, well, Darcy, who's back, will be translating for Pierre Philippe when Noelia talks, and vice versa, just to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. Noelia, I would love to start with you. What have you noticed in the context of climate change, the benefit of having those beautiful trees around your vineyard and the challenges that could come with it as well?
Yes, I will like first. Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you to everybody. Sorry for my English. I'm Spanish, so my Spanish accent is very strong, but I think you're going to understand me. If not, it's Darcy here. So I will first introduce how we start to look to these beautiful forests as a partner, because Emiliana has been doing organic and biodynamic agriculture since 1998. And nowadays, some facts, we have 720 hectares of native forest and 1,000 hectares of vineyards. So it's quite nice relation. But this is the origin of the project. No, this is Los Robles Estate in Colchagua Valley. And we had this beautiful forest, and we look at them, and it's magnificent. But we didn't know exactly what were the benefits. But in 2008, one professor, she's called Olga Barbosa, she should be here next year. I think so. See, she's amazing. She came to us and explained us the next thing. Where all the vineyards are planted in Chile is the most rich part of diversity in Chile, the place with the highest endemism and highest diversity rate. So the problem is that all these vineyards, all these forests, all that magnificent place is in hands of private people, you know.
We just have to make sure that we have time for Darcy to translate. Are you okay, Pierre Philippe?
Sorry.
Est-ce que tu comprends?
Les forêts au Chili sont
Tu veux que Darcy
privatisées, puis vous avez tout compris?
Okay, that's fine. She will just translate when you talk. That's fine. It's good. Ouais, ouais, ça va. Okay.
Excuse me. So we realize that we have such a richness in our own place. Chile has 20% of the surface protected and a certain kind of government protection, like natural parks. But this 20%, that is a lot of the surface, is mainly in Patagonia, right? Where the weather conditions are not suitable for life. But in this central Chile, where this vineyard is, we have Mediterranean weather characteristics. So it's the most richest and diverse area in Chile. So what she wanted, the truth is that no one goes up and cut the trees to work on altitude. I know we were talking about planting in altitude. This vineyard is 350 meters, but of course, if I go up, I can be 600. But she was worried about that because everybody wants to go up in altitude and explore the terroir and so. And when she opened our eyes and she showed us, hey, you have diamond here, and look all the benefits that they provide us, we decide we will never go up in the hill. In fact, this is the highest block. It's un tempranillo, not very good, but it's there. So next slide, yes. So before is how we look it, like the nature, beautiful, and now we look the forest into this way. No, for example, there are two important things that are, for example, climate regulation. Because we have this amount of trees around, there is high humidity in the ambient. So that's good for the vineyard because they don't get stressed so easily. No, they can make better exchange of gases. They don't close the stomach so easily. And also, of course, when I'm trying the garnachas next to the forest, and I'm like, oh, it's hot. I go in 2 steps into the forest, and I can feel the freshness. Obviously, that freshness is also going into the vineyard, at least to the blocks that are closer to it. The other point is water yield. Water yield is the best one, from my point of view, one of the best ones. We don't have many rains as we used to. I'm living in Chile since 2000, well, working here since 2011. And we used to have 500 millimeters, 600, then suddenly 250, dangerous, then 400. But this year, for example, we have 900 because we have the El Nino effect. So we are like, right? But what happened with the forest? The forest at the end is like an sponge. So the water that we get into the winter, in the spring, is taken by the forest, and then the forest use what it needs and then release it to the soil, to underground. So in fact, this vineyard is the one that or the cover crops last the most. We have other properties where the cover crops dry easily in spring, but in this one, now probably they are drying while I'm here. So the other benefit is the avoid erosion. This is also related with the cover crops that we work. And I like to give an example with this 900 millimeters of this year. I live in front of the winery, and there is only one road, right? It's the hill, the road, the house, and the river is 300 meters. And there were like 3 days raining, raining, raining. People, because it's been a 10 years of drought, so people don't clean the creeks. So creeks are full of wood and trash, whatever. So after 3 days with no lights, a son of 4-year-old, impossible to entertain. The creeks were coming out, and they say there is possible that we get trapped. I decide to run away, like movies, like take my kid and the bag. My husband was in Spain, and I was like, end of the world. And I was driving, and I pass in front of Emiliana, and I see, of course, water going through the road, crystal clean water. And when I went to my neighbor, bad neighbor, uh, all the water was brown and full of mud. So that means he was losing a tremendous amount of soil, organic matter, So the forest and the cover crops help us to avoid erosion and keep this pressure organic matter that we need in the soil. So this water management is one of the things that shocks me because I feel it, It's not like the other ones, they measure and they tell you. This one is something that you feel. And of course, habitat for diversity in natural pest control, Michelle explained it before very well. I don't know what is Michelle, but that's what happened, no? You have a high diversity of insects, beneficial, not beneficial, but at the end they are in an equilibrium. And yesterday somebody said also that you have to accept that you're going to have some problems. And we accept like 5% or 6% of powdery mildew or idiom. It's how it is. So, no, it can be perfect, completely, So that's the natural balance. Yes. And there is one more that is not here, because this is an old one. That for me as a winemaker is crucial. Is crucial. Is the provision of native yeast for the native spontaneous fermentations. We made a study of 2 years of different blocks, different grape varieties. We take the grapes, we analyze what is living there. So the grapes, yes, there. Then the first days of the fermentation, and then at the end of the fermentation. And we've seen there is a high relation of yeast that come from the vineyard. Of course, there is a lot of yeast that is already living in the cellar, because through the years, all these native yeast is being installed in your facilities, and they've been hybrid and so. But recently, I read a paper from New Zealand, very interesting, and they prove because they take samples from the grapes, they make the vinification, and of the forest. And they find like 30% of the yeast that is making the fermentation comes from the forest. It's always the yeast that finish the fermentation is Saccharomyces, a different strain of Saccharomyces, sorry. But especially the ones that work at the beginning are the ones that come from the forest. And that gives you like a fingerprint, like a real sense of terroir. And I think the OIV, UV, now it's including it was a fight. They are going to include the term microbiology. I hate that word, microbial terroir, because the microbes that live not only in the cluster, also in the soil, speaks about the place, and there is different, and there is proof that they change depending where you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Pierre Philippe, I want to ask you a question. We often hear, Noelia, we often hear that when you are near forests in a climate that's very dry, it's also a fire hazard. So can you talk about that? How is it beneficial is it scary to have a forest nearby when it's so dry?
Yes, it's very scary. Normally, the fires come from where the people live to the forest. So we are trying with the government to apply to certain programs, but it's difficult to achieve. Chile is not such a developed country as New Zealand they were talking about before. So, but we are thinking is more than we are doing it this year. Instead of making firewalls, they call it like fuel breaks. You break the fuel. That means, imagine there is the vine, and then it's not like we remove all the trees and bushes to make a firewall, because firewalls are naked soil. They almost arrive to the mineral soil. And then obviously this is going to cause you're disturbing. So you cut to the minimum level, and you have few meters of less mass to be inflamed, no? You know what I mean? That's what we are doing. And education to the neighbors. In fact, we are in a place that is risky because people live next to the forest, and in Chile, most of people get hit in winter with wood. So they have this wood in the garden during the summer where they are doing the barbecues. So it's a lot of education, and as you know, many of the fires also starts in the vineyards because you are with tractors and it's high temperatures, and then as you are applying sulfur, and then one stone, and we have always, things, I don't know the word in English, this thing to extintor in the tractor. Yes, but it's what we are doing in cross fingers.
Thank you. I'll come back with further questions. Yes.
Another thing, I forget it. There is one of the big threats of these natural landscapes are fires, foreign species. We have one tree is Australian that grows everywhere, so we cut it also. Another of the problems that we are trying to stop is that people who steals the leaf litter, the leaf litter, when the leaves fall down, you have a rich amount of leaves, very fertile. In Chile, it's very common that some people stole this.
To do what?
To sell it as a compost for your garden. It's amazing.
For your garden? Wow.
See? No, it's not a joke. We found a complete operation in the middle of the forest.
So to make compost, I guess, or sometimes. So
people-
they steal that to make the compost, and they make money. They steal it. They make money with it. Wow.
That's another bad thing. And the other one, maybe you'll laugh again, but it's trying that cattle doesn't go in because people move their cows illegally because in these places there are no fences. Everything is open and connected. In fact, you can go into a cellar, just jump in a fence like this.
So the cow go there illegally, you said?
See, they put the cows in our place to eat, and they go into the forest, and also they
wow.
break and they eat native plants and wild dogs. That's the last one. And then I let you talk. Wild dogs and cats are a terrible problem because they give illnesses to foxes, for example, and native animals there.
In the forest.
In the forest. There is not many responsibility with
Okay.
animals in Chile. So
Another topic discussion for next time.
dogs and cats, no good. Sorry.
Thank you. Pierre Philippe, you're passionate about the topic of agroforestry. très passionné par le sujet de l'agroforesterie et vous êtes très passionné parce que je crois que parfois vous êtes un peu critique envers les gens qui utilisent ce mot beaucoup pour le greenwashing et que vous voulez vraiment trouver l'aspect scientifique de la compréhension derrière la chose pour vous assurer de bien faire les choses avant d'aller de l'avant. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez nous parler de ce que vous faites? I know you're very passionate about the topic. Sometimes I think you're criticizing some of the producers who are using the term a little bit as a greenwashing, and you believe in it, but before you fully embrace it, you truly want to understand. So you're working with scientific, and you want to find the answer. So can you share what you've been doing at Vignerons Buzet? Merci.
Bien. Bonjour à tous. Donc déjà, merci de me permettre de m'exprimer dans ma langue maternelle.
Ça fait plaisir. Hein?
Thank you for allowing me to speak in French.
C'est aussi l'occasion de rendre un hommage bien aux Québécois, qui sont de vaillants défenseurs de cette langue sur ce territoire américain. Donc c'est un petit message politique au passage.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to the Québécois who are doing such a good job of defending the French language.
Je me souviens donc. Hein.
The slogan, je me souviens.
Et merci aussi à Michel, donc c'est un double remerciement. Merci aussi à Michel de donner l'occasion à un petit vignoble comme les vignerons de Buzet d'avoir un tel public et de pouvoir présenter nos travaux. En fait, avant de vous parler d'agroforesterie, je vais vous expliquer le cheminement qui nous a amenés à ce sujet.
I'd just like to explain in the beginning how we arrived where we are, and also thank you very much, Michel, that you've allowed me to present you our small wine
Thank
growing
you. Just one second.
project.
I just have a technical question. Can everyone hear Darcy well? Do we need to turn on the volume a little bit? Yeah. Sébastien, est-ce qu'on peut monter le son un petit peu pour le micro de Darcy?
All right, is this a bit louder?
Hein? OK, on est au maximum.
Is this loud enough?
It's le volume is at the maximum. So if you
Yeah.
just maybe can project a little bit more your voice with the microphone. No, the microphone can stay there, but just a little bit louder.
I'll try. All right.
Bon, moi, je vais me lever, ça va libérer l'air. Donc, je me sens plus à l'aise comme ça.
I think we're
Voilà,
more
donc
at ease,
déjà vous faire un petit point de géographie qui n'est pas
so that,
inutile pour comprendre pourquoi nous sommes arrivés à ce sujet.
yeah, I'd just like to explain geographically why we are doing our project here.
Oui, vous voyez, donc nous sommes donc dans le sud-ouest, entre Bordeaux et Toulouse. Assez peu de gens le savent, mais cette moyenne vallée de la Garonne est aujourd'hui le lieu de probablement du plus gros réchauffement climatique en France.
This area, actually in the Garonne River area, is really the one which is suffering most from climate change and global warming in France.
Nous avons sur ces 20 dernières années pris presque 3 degrés de moyenne de température.
And we've got about 3 degrees higher in temperature in the last few years.
Nous sommes naturellement sous l'influence de l'Atlantique, mais nous avons depuis quelque temps des remontées d'air chaud entre le Piémont du Massif central et les Pyrénées qui conduisent en fait à cet effet de réchauffement sur la zone de Buzet.
So that there's a lot of hot air coming from the Massif Central, and also we have the influence of the ocean, which is not far away.
Alors maintenant que vous savez où est Buzet, j'ai fait une partie de mon job là. Non, c'est pas gagné quand même. Voilà, donc on se retrouve dans un système qui a pour ambition, nous sommes une coopérative, qui a pour ambition de s'impliquer dans les services dits écosystémiques.
So that we're a cooperative, and our aim is to really integrate into the ecosystemic approach.
L'idée est donc de produire plus de biodiversité,
To produce greater biodiversity.
et c'est pourquoi, naturellement, l'arbre est venu dans notre réflexion.
And this is really what we're aiming for, and this is what I'm going to talk about.
Donc effectivement, je ne considère pas l'agroforesterie comme une imposture ou du greenwashing,
So I don't consider agroforestry any kind of a greenwashing approach,
mais comme une carte, un outil supplémentaire dans un processus d'intensification des méthodes agroécologiques dans l'agriculture.
it's really an additional tool for intensification in organic agriculture and wine growing.
Donc nous avons un vignoble, nous, qui est entièrement, ou pratiquement entièrement inclus dans de la forêt, de façon naturelle.
So naturally, our wine growing area is situated within a forestry area.
Nous avons donc eu l'idée d'optimiser nos observations en bâtissant, et c'est là où c'est original dans notre démarche, en bâtissant un vignoble expérimental
So we wanted to try experimenting with a particular kind of wine growing area to take advantage of this natural setting,
au service de nos viticulteurs
which would serve our wine growers in our cooperative.
et intégrant donc les démarches d'agroforesterie dans son établissement.
So integrating agroforestry practices in our cooperative.
Donc vous voyez ici les parcelles qui sont dans l'axe nord-sud,
These
En
are
rouge,
the
en bleu.
north-south parcels or lots,
ont été installées dans une vraie réflexion d'agroforesterie.
and these were set out with an agroforestry approach.
Alors, de quoi l'agroforesterie est le nom? C'est à la fois de l'agroforesterie de bordure, comme vous pouvez le voir,
We see it also, which is as in a border situation for the lots, as you can see,
une agroforesterie d'interrang. Nous avons tous les 25 à 30 mètres une ligne d'arbres,
which is also in the rows every 25 or 30 meters,
et une agroforesterie d'intrarang au sein de la ligne de vigne.
You want me to translate that?
sorry, it's inter-row.
Yeah, so he has the tree between the rows,
Yeah.
right? It's not just around, it's between the rows. In the row. Yeah,
In the
thank
row.
you.
In-
But we'll get it. We need tree translator here.
En fait, nous travaillons les trois niveaux.
So
Le
we're
niveau
working on,
herbacé,
3 levels on the shrub level
le niveau arbustif
and the trees
et le niveau arboré.
and also
3
the
étages.
forest, so that we have 3 levels.
Ça conduit à des schémas de parcelles, comme vous pouvez le voir ici, selon trois structures,
These are the different lot structures.
avec des implantations d'arbres champêtres
We have one which is with field trees
tous les 25 à 30 mètres.
every 25 or 30 meters.
Alors, dans les arbres champêtres que nous utilisons, puisque je sais qu'il y aura sûrement cette question, nous avons des érables,
And we use mainly maples,
des ormes,
elms,
des frênes,
ash trees.
des mûriers,
These are, sorry, it's blackberry. It's a type of blackberry tree.
Ensuite, nous avons des haies fruitières,
And then we have hedgerows, which are made up of fruit trees.
et enfin un mélange d'arbres fruitiers et d'arbres champêtres.
And then we have a mixture of fruit trees and field species.
Nous avons rajouté à ce dispositif des noues, qui sont des sortes de fossés végétalisés,
And we've added some ditches which are planted,
qui créent des zones fraîches, humides,
which create humid zones.
placées dans les vents dominants, c'est-à-dire dans les vents d'ouest,
And they're in a position with the dominant west wind,
et qui viennent donc rafraîchir en aval les parcelles de vignes.
so that they refresh or they cool off the different lots upstream.
Donc on a déjà une première réponse par rapport à la problématique du réchauffement climatique.
So that's one solution for global warming that we're trying.
Deuxième réponse, c'est le travail que nous avons commencé à faire avec ce qu'on appelle des arbres en tétard.
And there's another solution that we're trying, which is trees which are pruned at the crown
C'est-à-dire des arbres dont on coupe la tête tous les 5 à 7 ans,
every 5 or 7 years.
en diminuant la surface aérienne, ça diminue aussi la surface racinaire de fait.
So it reduces the space that the trees take up in a higher level.
Ça provoque une plongée des racines
And it causes a deepening of roots.
et donc la possibilité pour les racines de l'arbre de collaborer avec le système racinaire des vignes au travers de ce dont parlait hier le professeur Selos, le réseau mycorhizien.
So that what Dr. Salos was talking about yesterday, and this the deepening of the roots of the trees makes it possible to collaborate with the vine roots.
Mycorrhiza.
L'avantage de ce type de conduite de l'arbre,
So the advantage of this way of pruning the trees,
c'est qu'il permet la mécanisation.
this allows mechanization.
De même pour les arbres fruitiers, les haies fruitières qui sont introduites.
And the same thing for the fruit trees and the hedgerows of fruit plants.
Parce qu'en fait, le mariage entre l'arbre et la vigne est très ancien.
Of course, collaboration between trees and vines is a very old technique.
Et ce qui a brisé ce mariage, c'est la mécanique.
So that it's-
What broke this symbiosis over time was because of mechanization.
Donc la principale préoccupation est de pouvoir permettre une mécanisation de ce type d'installation.
So that our main worry is how to carry out mechanization in this type of experimental wine growing area.
Donc voilà pour les aspects de l'implantation générale. Donc après, il y a des règles à suivre, hein. J'expliquais par exemple le fait d'être sur un axe nord-sud. Évidemment, c'est pour des questions d'humectation, c'est-à-dire que le circuit du soleil fait que ça peut il n'y a pas que des avantages avec l'agroforesterie, il y a aussi des risques qui s'augmentent par l'humidité sur la face nord de l'exposition.
So
Là-
that because it's oriented, because of the north-south orientation, that causes certain problems on the north side.
Donc là, on est obligé d'utiliser les techniques classiques de gestion des problèmes en
And
viticulture,
this means we have to carry out certain
évidemment.
traditional methods of.
On doit gérer aussi la
techniques.
proximité entre la forêt ou les arbres et les premiers rangs.
And we have to manage the distance between the trees and the first row of vines.
Donc on recommande au minimum d'avoir au moins 4 mètres
And we recommend at least 4 meters of distance between them
pour éviter l'antagonisme racinaire.
so that there won't be any conflict between the roots.
Et selon si certaines espèces, ou en tout cas dans certains sols, les racines vont assez latéralement, parce
And,
que le sol n'est pas profond,
and because in certain areas where the soil is not too deep, the roots will tend to grow more sideways.
à ce moment-là, on passe une lame, on fait ce qu'on appelle un cernage, on passe une lame qui coupe les racines antagonistes afin d'éviter un stress et une compétition néfaste à la vigne.
So that we do undercutting,
Mm.
so that there won't be any competition, harmful competition between the vines.
Bien sûr, la compétition, peut-être pour poursuivre sur les aspects techniques, la compétition, elle repose sur deux choses, l'eau
Competition for water
et l'azote.
and nitrogen.
Donc, effectivement, les besoins en azote de la vigne et de l'arbre se font au même moment et sur à peu près le même niveau de sol. Donc, c'est là où il faut être attentif.
So this is where we have to be careful because the needs in water and nitrogen are the same for the vines and the trees, about the same level.
Voilà, donc ensuite, sur le choix des espèces, on essaye de trouver des espèces qui sont locales, évidemment,
We try to find local tree species,
plutôt rustiques,
more field or
Oui.
just country, rural
Yeah.
type trees.
plutôt rustiques. Après, ça va dépendre un petit peu de la nature des objectifs que l'on a en termes d'agroforesterie. On peut avoir des objectifs purement environnementaux et agronomiques, mais on peut aussi avoir des objectifs économiques.
So that we have our objectives in terms of ecological improvements, but also on a commercial level.
Historiquement, en France, au 19e siècle, nous avions ce qu'on appelait une technique qui s'appelait les jouals.
In the 19th century in France, we had a technique which is called joal.
Ça consistait en une complantation d'arbres fruitiers et de vignes.
And this was based on co-plantations of vines and trees.
Ce qui permettait aux fermiers, sur une surface réduite, de pouvoir utiliser au maximum l'espace sur le plan économique.
So that farmers, this enabled them to really profit as much as possible, but in a small scale way.
Alors on découvre aujourd'hui avec les couverts végétaux, si on rajoute le niveau herbacé, qu'on a aussi la possibilité, avec des plantes pivotantes ou des fébroles, etc., à la fois de servir la vie du sol et en même temps, éventuellement, d'avoir un débouché économique.
So that especially using crop cover, we've found a way to continue to have some economic advantages.
Donc, outre les aspects donc, environnementaux, éventuellement économiques, on peut avoir aussi, alors, dans les aspects économiques, on peut aussi avoir des choix qui sont aussi des choix par rapport à des bois d'ouvrage.
So along with some economic advantages, we also have a possibility of timber production.
Donc, l'une des questions que nous nous posons aujourd'hui avec les scientifiques, c'est à la fois les notions liées au microclimat de la parcelle, c'est des notions liées notamment aux turbulences et à tout ce qui est biodiversité, souterraine comme aérienne, mais c'est aussi réfléchir au cycle économique et à la gestion forestière.
So that in terms of considering these micro units,
Mhm.
not only economic considerations, but also we're looking at forestry development processes as well.
Voilà, donc après, là, on a beaucoup de choses sur lesquelles nous manquons de connaissances encore à ce stade, dans la collaboration entre la vigne et l'arbre. Nous savons aujourd'hui que l'arbre a un effet sur le cycle de l'eau, nous savons que l'arbre peut avoir des débouchés économiques, mais on n'a pas une parfaite maîtrise du système, et notamment sur le long terme.
So we don't have a total mastery in the long term, and we know that our trees have an effect on water cycle. So these are things we're studying.
Et donc, il nous faut être très prudent quand on plante des arbres, notamment, être très prudent aussi sur la densité de plantation.
So we have to be careful about the density when we're planting the trees.
Et donc, sur la nature des espèces, la densité, nous, on n'a pas dépassé les 25 à 30 sujets par hectare.
So that we're limited now to about 30 different tree species per hectare.
Et on a choisi, comme vous l'avez entendu, plutôt des espèces à feuillage léger,
So we've chosen mostly species that have light foliage.
afin de permettre, bien, comme vous pouvez l'imaginer, le passage de la lumière
So this is
et
allowing
réduire les risques d'humidité. Ouais.
light to pass better and also rainfall, etc.
Voilà.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Is that it?
We're a bit behind in time, so I have about 10 questions for them, but I want you to ask them questions. So I'll open the questions to the room. Yes.
Hello, I have a question for Noelia. I'm here. And my name is Anne Dumont. I'm a microbiologist at L'Allemand Enology. So I was very interested in what you were saying at the end. Very, very interesting comment. I'm curious about the study that you did on the microorganisms in the forest versus the vineyard and the cellar. Were you able to identify which species you found in the forest ecosystem versus what you found in the vineyard and what you found in the cellar? And also, did you do this over one vintage or several vintages? And if yes, did you see a difference or so on?
Well, maybe I didn't explain properly. There are the study that we made was only the block in the vineyard, some blocks in the vineyard, and then during the fermentation. And the New Zealand one is the one I have here the name of the paper. Was comparison of the forest with the grape juice. So in our case, of course we find, because we made it with metagenomica, right? And we put all those in a database, and we found, well, of course, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, unfortunately, but other strains of Saccharomyces, many Torulospora, Mechinikovia, and so on, and others that are La Chancea, that is very interesting. That is a yeast that, while it's doing the fermentation, decrease a little bit the pH. That nowadays the pH down, the acidity up. And it's very interesting nowadays with the heat. So the biocontrol is also a new tool for cope this climate change. And the difference between the two vintages, it was not so big. We were expecting, because I always been fermenting spontaneously in that winery. So in some years I ferment worse than or better. But I realized if I have a difficult year of fermentation, it's happening to everybody in Chile. You know, it's something very weird. It doesn't matter if they use commercial yeast and synthetic nutrients, it happens. But there is not a big change. What is very good, because at the end, most of this diversity is already living in the cellar. You know, it's like from the vineyard directly is like 10% each year, but the ones that are installed in the cellar, of course, come from that. Yes. and I would like to say something that we will talk later, but these yeasts that are at the beginning and they die easily, they consume all the sugar, are very interesting because they are not sugar efficient. That's why they die. So the ways they or the sugars that they take are many sugars that are linked to flavors. So at the end, these beginning yeasts are very helpful to release and give complexity.
Yes, cool. Thank you very much. We're going to have one more question here.
David Patterson, Tantalus Vineyards. I just want maybe for Pierre to comment on bird pressure. We are in a region in Canada that has an immense amount of birds, starlings in particular. They will peck through nets. They will take a lot of our crop. Same as where I come from in New Zealand. We have a bird called wax-eye that takes a lot of our crop as well. Is there increased bird pressure because of these havens that you are creating that would be havens for birds? Or are you just lucky enough to be in an area where that is not such a problem?
Alors, je vais être un peu comme Joseph. Ça dépend.
Oh, be like Joseph. It depends where.
It depends. Non, alors on n'a pas une pression très forte puisque nous, à côté de ça, on a aussi des rapaces.
We don't have very much pressure in that sense.
Et donc, on favorise aussi l'implantation de rapaces qui vont chasser les oiseaux.
So we don't have much prey for the birds.
No, they have prey for the birds.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there is a lot of predators for the birds.
Oui.
Okay.
Oui.
Mhm.
You know what happened in our case? Of course, we have birds, a lot. But in the forest and in the biological corridors that we build with native plants, we always choose also plants that produce berries, native, like maqui, for example. So trying to give other things to the bird to eat. But of course, there are some roads that I don't know why they love them and they eat them. But it's try to create diversity and other things for the birds to eat.
En fait, nous, on a implanté des nichoirs spécifiques pour héberger des prédateurs.
But we have particular nesting boxes to protect the birds.
Mais ce qu'il y a d'intéressant aussi dans cette, quand on est sur des schémas comme ça complexes au niveau arbres et arbustes, on arrive à faire des niches écologiques extrêmement riches qui s'équilibrent très bien, notamment avec des chauves-souris dont on a vu la population s'augmenter très fortement, les pipistrelles, c'est des toutes petites chauves-souris, qui ont pour avantage de consommer pratiquement 10 fois leur poids chaque nuit en insectes. Et donc nous permettre de, là aussi, c'est un bon supplétif pour nous permettre de réduire aussi la pression en termes d'usage d'insecticides.
So that we can use less insecticide because we have in between the hedgerows and the trees, it's a good area for particularly bats, the very small pipistrelle bat, who can eat 10 times its weight in insects every night.
Et donc on crée comme ça des niches écologiques très riches.
So that we have very rich ecological niches in our development here.
Thank you. We're going to take one more question, please, in the room. Anybody? Okay.
You're hungry.
Well, I want to thank you. I think that there's going to be a lot more questions continuing afterwards, but I think it's going to be interesting to follow how to do agroforestery for people trying to bring it back, right? When you don't have that natural site. And hopefully, Pierre Philippe, you share those findings with other people so that other regions and other producers can benefit, because it's amazing to see the research you do. So a lot of people are trying to reintroduce, but it's complicated. So thanks for sharing that. Thank you very much. Merci, gracias.